So if you can put in the chat where you're from, then that would be really cool. And I will share my screen. All right, can everyone see that? Should be on a speaker view. Cool, cool, cool. All right, so I'm looking at solution-focused approach with small groups. Now, my introduction or my specialty, I suppose, with small groups is working with grief and loss. And so I've been working with a program called Oceans Grief and Loss for since 2012. And yeah, since 2012. And I suppose in 2016, I was introduced to solution-focused approach by Michael Durant. I did a 2-day course, and that kind of got me hooked straight away. Thought, oh, this fits my personality, fits the way I do things. I had come out of a CBT, or I still do. I suppose am a CBT kind of person, and in some ways I feel like solution-focused. And I could get in trouble saying is a little bit CBT because it's about changing our pattern of thinking. But what better way to change to a preferred future would be my slant on that, and the preferred future that they come up with is certainly the best new way of thinking that I can think of. So I'll introduce myself. Where am I? I have to click over here, I think. So who is Matt Cameron? I'm trying to say who's Matt Cameron, but not what he does. I don't want a whole list of credentials or anything. So I am born in Morrinsville in the Waikato. It's in the North Island, New Zealand. I enjoy working with people. I am a handyman. I love building and fixing things in terms of wood and metal. And we've got a little lifestyle block of land that we help out. My wife does most of it probably. She's the animal person. I just fix the troughs and the fence and the buildings. And also I teach as well. So that's my other job in a primary school at the moment. My father died from cancer when I was just 6 years old. And so that's kind of my empathy, I could say, with grief and loss, and seeing how I coped through those things, and my family did as well. I am married. I have been married for 20 years to my wife, Rachel. We have 2 boys, 17 and 19. Both have left school. And yeah, living at home at the moment, actually, because of this sort of situation. One of my sons was over in Melbourne and then came back just before our lockdown in New Zealand and has been here ever since. I've grown to enjoy listening to people's stories. Certainly, it's been a good thing. And I'm a Christian, and that motivates me to serve. So that's kind of all the things where I'm at as well. Right, let's just look at that. All right. And so I'm really curious. I'm not sure if you want to put your microphones on, but I would be amiss if I didn't ask what your best hopes from this meeting were. So I want you to come up with your things in your head. What do you want to get out of today? So if you're talking to someone tomorrow about how helpful this little talk was for the next 45 minutes or so, what might you be saying? What have you gleaned from this? What do you want out of this time? And if I ask the next question, what difference would it make? What would you notice that was different? What would be good about it? What would someone close to you notice that would be good? What else? It's always, if you're stuck for a question, just say, what else? This is what I was taught and what works for me, I suppose, as well. What else? So just think about that for a moment. What are your best hopes from this meeting? If you want to put some things in the chat, that would be fine as well. All right, next slide. I want to say a big thank you as well. I am so grateful to this community. When we're talking about a world tour, how many professions have a free 24-hour conference, and there's a lot of people who have given up a lot of time to put this together, and in a short time really as well. I am particularly thankful to Dominic and Alfie with their SF on Tour. If you have not subscribed to that podcast, can I highly recommend it. It's my driving tool when I'm going to and from work. I really love it. And all the different speakers, the variety of people they talk to around the world about solution-focused approach, they are all generous as well, because if you go onto the website, sfontour.com, they share their resources as well. So not only is the podcast really helpful, but then you go into the resource section and there's tons of resources on from each person as well. And you can go to their website and download all sorts of things. ElliotConnie.com also has a lot of free stuff if you're into free stuff. And the brief people in the UK with Chris Iverson and his team, Evan George and I'm going to forget those names now, thinking offhand there as well. So yeah, go to those websites if you're getting this, and yeah, thank you to all those people who do share. And I think that's a really cool thing. I have done some workshops with Solution Focused, and on those podcasts, the people say, you know, write to me and ask me anything. And so I've asked for slideshows and resources, and they freely just give them to anybody who asks. And I would certainly do the same in terms of what I do as well. So yes, let's carry on. Any questions? Put them in the comments, I suppose, and if we get some time at the end, then I'm really keen to look at that. And I want to learn from this as well. This is not me an expert at all by any means. I've got some questions written down that I want to ask people if they want to comment on how what's been successful and what's worked for them in terms of small groups as well. So if we think of solution-focused approach, it's defined by, or the problem, when you talk about a problem, it's defined by a group, by a common experience. So in my situation, it's a grief and loss group. And what they want instead of that grief is the gold, or the gold nuggets that we then discuss. And it isn't necessarily related to the problem, you know? So when we're talking about grief, they might come up with something like, I want my husband back, or I want my marriage back together, or thinking of children, they might say something, I don't want to be sad all the time. And so when I ask the question to follow up that in our group, you know, what difference would it make if you had that? What comes from there is really kind of the nugget that unlocks a lot of things. Or if you ask what difference would it make 3 or 4 times, then you're narrowing it down to what they're doing, to what they want to feel. And it's changing that that language, I guess, would be my experience of that. Thinking of a girl just recently where she said, I don't want to be sad all the time, and through the tears, that's what she really wanted. Group of 5 teenage girls. I said, so what would you want instead? Which all of you are probably familiar with that. And she said, well, I want my dad to be back, and I haven't seen him for a month, and I don't feel like he loves me anymore. He doesn't want to spend time with me. And so what difference would it make if you had your dad back and if he spent time with you? And you could say it's a glib answer, but she said, I'd be happy. So that's the sort of thing, yeah, I can visualize, yeah, you would be happy. And what would you notice tomorrow, for example, or if we left this room, what would you notice that would tell me you were happy? What would be the first thing you'd notice? And there's this through the tears and lots of I don't knows, I suppose, and just asking the question another way, what would you notice? What would be the thing that would be really pleased to see? And she said, I would be more talkative. And I just couldn't hold the smiles back in that sense, because it's like I would have never come up with that as a sign of her being happy. And it was her words, and asked her about a time where she was happy and more talkative, and that just became when she was on the way home on the bus or something like that. And it was just that group sense as well. They could nod and say, yep, I've seen that in you, because some of these girls knew each other, or one of them knew that girl, and I've seen that, and you were more bubbly. And it just became that encouragement within the group setting, and a genuine best hopes. So grief and loss has been my thing, and I've been in that for 9 years. We call it the Oceans Program, and that is because we've got this poem. It says, grief is like the ocean. It comes on waves, ebbing and flowing. Sometimes the water is calm, sometimes it is overwhelming. All we can do is learn to swim. And for me, that encompasses the philosophy behind our program. It's about living with the loss, not getting over it. And that, again, fits the solution focused type of thinking in my mind as well, because it's about living my best in the circumstances that I'm in, doing my best. What would be the question, if tomorrow you woke up and you were at your best, what would you notice? What difference would it make? What would you notice? What would others notice? Is the kind of thing we're doing in our conversations with grief and loss. I've got a list of best hopes that people come up with. I thought I'd grab one of the sheets, because we're asking this kind of question each week as well. And some of these you can just go, that's cool. What would you ask? What would you ask to follow up those questions? In terms of, if that was their best hope, encouragement to look forward. Well, what difference would it make if you had encouragement to look forward? And they might say, well, I'd probably wake up and feel more confident for the day. I might, which is confidence there as well. I might relax more. Okay, so if you woke up tomorrow morning and you had confidence for the day, or you could relax more, what's the very first thing you'd notice? And in general, if I say this, in the group setting, if they just come up with one thing, really, just that one little nugget, I talk about shining the beam off them and onto the next person, because there's others are noticing those things. They see it for themselves. And if they think about that, just one thing for that day or night, whatever, when we do the program, I'm pleased, because they often bring that up the next week as well, even if it's just one thing. You can see these other things there. Keep safe. I won't do death by PowerPoint and read everything. I'll let you read yourself. Can I read a children's story to you? In terms of, this is what I'm trying to do here is just tell you a little bit about what I do in the grief and loss programs, and then see how we've brought the solution focused things into the program. I did have I talked to one of the leaders in solution focused, and they said one of the barriers to using solution focused approach, the solution focused approach, with groups, is often curriculum, using a program. And I haven't experienced that. I've only experienced, there's a little bit of education that comes through our program, but the conversations we have at the beginning of the program are what really is key. And it's what the participants really look back at, although there is some little learning things that they go, that was really helpful as well. So as I go through there, you'll see some of those things that might be helpful. And I think I did hear, I might have been on a podcast with the Solution Focused, with the Simply Focused podcast. Someone talked about, Steve DeShazer was asked a question once about, if you had advice for a client that was helpful, would you give it? And if we're meant to stay neutral and not give our advice and all those things in the purest way of solution focused, the answer would be no, kind of thing. But I think Steve DeShazer said, why wouldn't you? If it's helpful, do it. You might not know if it's helpful for them, and they can reject, or you wouldn't make it a rule and be legalistic about it. But if there was something that, maybe you might find this helpful, that could be a way of giving advice, but in a way that's authoritative, non-judgmental, but helpful. And what happens in a group setting as well is they might not necessarily be trained in solution focused, and so they often give each other advice. And sometimes as a facilitator, you step back and just let them have that conversation. And possibly in terms of just saying, well, maybe that's helpful. If it's helpful, take it. If it's not, try something different, which is one of those tenets of solution focused as well. All right, so here's a story. This is a New Zealand story based on a true story. It was a school trip of teenagers going into the mountains up in Auckland, and it was called canyoning, which is walking down a small stream down a mountain. And while they were walking down the stream, a lake upstream broke, and it was a flash flood that washed this group away, and 5 of the teenagers died, and one of the teachers died back in 2008, I think it was. And the siblings of those people who died wrote this story, and I'm going to read it and just see where it sits as well. At first, I felt empty, puzzled and lost. I didn't know what to do or feel. I laid awake all night. My mind was blank. Every time I thought about my sister not being there anymore, it felt gloomy in my heart. I was filled with grief, falling apart and sad. Sometimes I get so frustrated, I didn't feel like I could carry on. Sometimes, every time I woke up, it all came flooding back, and the hurt and the loss felt new again. Sometimes people say dumb stuff. They don't know what I'm feeling, and they expect me to be sad all the time. Sometimes my friends forget about what has happened, and I feel like I have changed, but they haven't. Sometimes people are fussing and hugging, and I just want to be alone. I wish I had more moments with my sister. There are things I'd like to say. And life grows around it, this grief of mine, and I learn small things don't matter. Like ball dresses, sports scores, skateboards, and science projects. I learn in the hurt there is healing. And I learn to live life to the full. I guess it will never be the same. Now I think people can relate to the different experiences in this book. Maybe you can pick a page there that you can relate to in particular if you've been through some grief. And we asked the question, what were you pleased about at that time? How did you handle that well? How did you cope through those experiences, or that experience that you're related to there? We say, we say talking about it is helpful, is basically the philosophy, I suppose, in behind it. And we, as facilitators of that program, have the choice about what we talk about. So we will target, those strengths and the resilience, if I talk about those words, as we go through this program. So the first 6 sessions, as a children's program, is 8 sessions. The adult program is 6 sessions. But it's basically, this is a normal grief and loss program. Get to know the person is that first part. Ask and talk about the feelings and normalize feelings. Ask how they've coped. and how they've used those feelings to help as well. What strengths do they have in those times? And asking why can be part of that process as well. Not so much for the children, but with adults, telling their story, listening to the story, asking good questions about their strengths and and good memories. And then the second part of it, and not the half, there's 2 sessions here, talking about strengths and changes. And certainly changes is one of those solution focus tenets, that we're always in a mode of change and moving forward, and then looking beyond, about the positives in life now and life after Oceans is finished, and we celebrate that time together. So this sort of the first part is looking at the past, and then the second part is looking at the future. Being able to talk about it is helpful. So that's kind of the program that we run. That's the curriculum, you could say. So how does it work as we go? So each session we would ask about their best hopes. Remember, I said at the beginning that problems only exist in the context of being better. So whenever we talk about problems, we can also talk about something better, something better. What were you pleased about and how you handled that? And how did you stop it getting worse? Or how would you rather have such and such? What would you rather have instead of those feelings that are overwhelming or getting you down? And what did you notice about yourself that was different and good when that grief does show up? Can they see the little gems that may be there? So helpful ways to live with our grief. Again, I just took this from the participants. They come up with these kind of ideas that help them, things that help them. I think I've missed off one that quite often comes up, actually. It was gardening, which isn't my forte, but so people quite often come up, yeah, I enjoy weeding out the garden and making things look good. So how do we support people in their grief? Just being there is a big part. So there's that commonality. Suddenly, when you've got a grief program, a small group, and talk about small groups, actually, I should say about the size. So our groups, the maximum size is 6. For me, the ideal size is 4. That I've found is the best to have in a conversation about. So 4 is really, really good. 6 tends to be the limit. 3 is about right, but 3 can often be difficult because if someone's away, then there's only 2, and our programs always have 2 facilitators there as well. So have a 2-on-2. It's getting a little bit overwhelming sometimes. Allowing people to just talk about it, and listening for opportunities. We're listening for opportunities, not information. It's kind of one of those key things that I've been learning in the last couple of years. Asking open solution-focused questions, caring for them and believing in them. And that's that Elliot Connie's known for his superhero imagery. It's trying to find that gifting that those people actually have, and looking for that superhero in each of them, and looking for the gems, the magic moments, as a colleague of mine talks about, through the week. What's a small moment where you have seen something good? And it might have only been for 30 seconds, but what was that? What was it like? And amplify those moments. So one of the key things is, of course, we need to listen. So did you know that listen and silent, if you're talking in English, are spelt with the same letters? Just to prove it to you, I had a play with the PowerPoint and made it spell listen. So how do we listen? Well, we stay silent, and that's not a bad thing to stay silent. And just by being silent, just by way of a interlude, my last name is Cameron, and I thought this was really interesting, that if you change the letters around in Cameron, it spells, you got it. So maybe I could do more marriage counseling or something. We'll see how that goes. I do enjoy relationship counseling, but I don't do much of it. My thing at the moment is the grief and loss. All right. So when we're looking at problem versus solution, and this is, I think, when we're doing our group work, it's often a education program for the participants to start thinking about what it is, those small moments of success, rather than talking about the problem. And I can even think of we've just started an adult group, and someone was saying, you know, I feel sad all the time, or I feel this grief and this burden all the time. And then there might have been part of the conversation, they said something like, I felt a little bit better on Wednesday, or something like that. And my radars went up, and I just, oh, tell me about that. And I think that's the thing that we do as solution focused, helpers. Then we're looking at those exceptions. We're looking for those times when it's not like that, and really zoning in to that time. Yeah. I think you're all probably on the same page if we're talking about that. So the problem focus versus solution focus. We're asking questions, not how long you've been like this in the problem, but we're asking, what would life be like if you weren't that, if you had something different? Tell me about the times when things were better. What strengths did you draw on that got you through? How did you cope? Are all really good questions to ask. So in a group, and this would be individually as well, but we're there to solve, we're not there to solve problems. We're there to find solutions. And like I said before as well, the solution may not be anything to do with the problem, but the problem seems to go away when we start working on those solutions that the client comes up with, which is cool. Right. So using the solution focused approach in a peer support group, and that's where they are contributing as well. It's not a program where it's a person at the front standing, and it is a conversation that we have. There's assumption that people there in the program, they join a program like this to live with the loss in a different way, something that they want, something better. So they've come to a grief and loss program, or whatever small group it is, whatever topic that small group has functioned on, which is one of the questions I'll ask at the end for you guys, if you can help me out with that, because I'm quite keen to know more about any problem, any program that could exist. And if different problems, if I use that there, were in the same group, could it still work the same as a single problem focus group? Knowing that the solution doesn't always relate to the problem, I suppose. So what difference would it make? If that better shows up, what would you notice? And what would others notice? And I think if I highlight those three questions, those are the main, if you want to boil solution-focused conversation down to, for me, the most basic is just asking those three questions. What difference would it make? What would you notice? And what would others notice? And of course, it's what else, and getting that description of those things. They talk about again, I got this off the Simply Focused podcast, the 30-second kind of time factor. So what else would you notice if they say, well, you're talking about getting breakfast and then I'd go and jump in my car? That might be more than 30 seconds. So let's draw it back and get more detail, how you got to the car in a different way that was pleasing and good, where you were at your best, living with your loss, I suppose, in a more positive way. Not necessarily forgetting, but living with and moving forward with the loss. Not moving out of the loss or away from it, moving forward with it. So the two main components of solution-focused conversation, and you probably get this at every seminar or webinar you join and watch, we're establishing the best hopes. What are your best hopes? What's their preferred future from this conversation? And then describing the future reality of those best hopes when they show up. As I said just then, what difference would it make? What would you notice? What would others notice is kind of the most basic summary that it could be. In Oceans, that's our grief and loss group, we're helping group members have hope that a better is possible. We believe that it is possible. They've come to see things better, and that's the assumption that we're going to work with right from the start. And to borrow a 2-word summary of all of that from, I have to remember the name now. Must be panicking because the name is gone from me in the UK. He said that these 2 words, instead and suppose. And I can't think of a better way to summarize all of that. So they come with a problem and you say, what would you want instead? What would you rather have? And then suppose that showed up tomorrow or after you leave, what would you notice and what would others notice? What difference would it make? So if you want to summarize or pass this on to anybody else, instead and suppose would be the most basic summary of solution focused approach. So the principles of solution focused work in terms of group work probably aren't a whole lot different from working with individuals. Focusing on change and possibilities. And when we're talking about change, that's basically what causes grief. If I'm talking about the grief program, because it's all about loss of job, or it could be health changes, death-related changes, separation changes, all those sorts of things are all about change. And so when we talk about solution focus approach, drawing into the grief, we're saying change is a normal part of life. And so what change can we grow from this? What could be better? What would you rather have? What would you have instead? And suppose that showed up. We're creating goals and preferred future. So we're asking those sorts of questions that are getting them to ponder what could be their best future, what could be their best hopes from this time together, and building on strengths and skills and resources. And so we use strength cards and talk about what their strengths are, doing little activities that identify some of their strengths. Maybe they haven't thought about those kind of things before, and then tapping into that, because when those strengths, we talk about that actually, when those strengths are violated, when, say, if one of their strengths is justice, or a strength about honesty, when one of those things is they see dishonesty or injustice and they get angry or feel grieved about those things, it's a way of understanding more about yourself. And so you can say, well, this isn't going to control me. I've got control on this, and I can see why those things are kind of hurting me more, and what would I rather have instead. Being respectfully curious about change. Creating a cooperation and collaboration within the group. We're all coming up with these ideas together, and that's important too in terms of starting a small group. We have to have a contract right at the start. What do we agree on that's going to make us feel safe in this group? And the 3 things that I make sure the group comes up with, and I might suggest them too if they don't come up from the group, are the ideas of respect and honesty and confidentiality. So those 3. But what also comes into that is sometimes groups need to be told, or suggested, I suppose, that rescuing isn't actually helpful. So if someone is having a tough time answering some of the questions, someone's not going to say, yeah, just, step back, let them go, leave them alone, or there, it's okay. We won't rescue. We'll let them struggle with those questions sometimes in that respectful way, putting their best efforts into play. I think those are important things. So respect, honesty, confidentiality, and not rescuing are those things we have. And we actually repeat that contract every week. Is there anything we need to add to this to ensure our safety, ensure that we can trust each other in this group, and that this group is going to function in a way that's going to be helpful? Using humor, creativity, of course. With our positivity can come joy. And I think of that sometimes at the end we make a card for each other and saying, you've been so brave, you've well done for the progress that you've made, because I can't think of anyone who hasn't made progress, and it's always good to celebrate that. And they make a card, but they're pulling little stickers out and cutting bits of pictures out and gluing them into a card, and the creativity is switching on those brain neurons that help solve problems. And when creativity is tapped into, then our solution ability becomes stronger. So using humor to do that as well. Fostering that facilitator and member connection, and it has to be, I think, an equal connection there. There's not, I'm the expert in this group. I suffer grief as well, and I'm feeling that sometimes, and I want to learn from you as well. I had a person one time say, "You want me to just say happy, don't you?" When I was asking, what are their best hopes, and what would people notice if those best hopes showed up. And I said, I don't know. I don't know what you would notice. I'm not wanting an answer, because you're the one that is in charge here. It's your answer that I want, not my answer. I like this, and I've forgotten. I've got in my notes here. I even forgot where I got this from, but it was 3 words of, when I said before that we're looking for not information, we're looking for opportunities. And when people are talking, in my mind, I'm looking for these 3 kind of opportunities. And I remember it came from a conversation. It might have been on one of those podcasts or not. I can't remember, but it was about talking to people who are feeling suicidal. And what do we amplify when we're talking to people who are feeling suicidal? And these are the things that this person was talking about. We're looking for traits of connection. If they can name someone they're connected to, or someone might notice what their best hopes were. Amplify that connection. Amplify compassion when they saw someone else and they helped someone, and you amplify that trait that they are there. Because if any of these things show up, the research was on that. What I remember about it was that if any of these things, you amplify that, then they're less likely or more likely to live on, less likely to complete suicide. And contribution is the acts of service. If they're helping in a soup kitchen because that helps them when they're feeling down, contribution, compassion, connection, those sorts of things. And just those are the things you go, wow, that's awesome. Tell me about that. And what's it like? What do people notice about you when you're doing that and you're feeling connected, you're feeling that compassion or contribution, those things. What were you pleased about? And what did others notice? All right, and follow-up sessions. I know that's the next one. So the most important thing is people don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel. And that's just that connection that we have with the people we're serving. It's about how you listened, how you empathized, and that's what they remember, not what you said, but how you made them feel. And it's an educational quote of the teachers that you can remember when you were younger. It's probably how they made you feel, not what they taught you. Follow-up sessions, we would ask in the second session and onwards, what have you noticed has been better this week? And there's an assumption there that things are better, but I do always explain there's no right answer to that question, because maybe they haven't had such a good week. I can think of a lady recently, a couple of months ago, who was in our Oceans program, the Grief and Loss program, and her cat had died 2 nights before, and we were in about session number 3 of the program, but her cat had died that week, and it was a cat that her husband had bought when they were married, and her husband had died, and so it meant a lot more to her. And she said, I've had a crap week, and that was a right answer in terms of there's no wrong answer kind of thing, so there's only 3 possible replies to answering the question, what is better? Is something's been better, or it stayed the same, or it got worse? And all those answers are valid, but from a solution focused perspective, we want to focus on what have you done that's contributed to those things getting better? Or how have you stopped it getting worse? Or how have you kept things the same? What's or the last one is, what's given you enough hope to come back today and still want something to be better? And amplifying that kind of story. And that's, we're looking for opportunities to, and you'll be surprised when people go, what do you mean it's been worse this week? What do you mean? What have I done to stop things from getting even worse? Well, it's exactly that. What have you done to stop things from getting worse? Or what gave you, what brought you here tonight to want something more? What's brought you back? And one of that lady actually said, coming along to this group was what kept me, or looking forward to the group coming together again was what kept me going during the week. And that's nice to hear that sort of question. So how do we respond to those kind of best hopes? Again, it's wow, how did you do that? I want to know more detail. What strengths did you show or use to get through that? And what was different? What was new? What's been new for you? What would be one thing that you would notice if your best hopes became a reality? And could you do more of that? All those kind of things. What's the sort of, what tells you that there is a solution to this? What would tell you there is a solution? And if a solution was there, what would you notice about yourself? We don't need to know about the problem. That's what I'm trying to say with that. So, solution-focused approach, it's all about practice. You can't, if you have a practice partner, I've got a list, and there's all sorts of things on the internet of what you can do to practice. If you email me, I should put my email address there, free indeed, if I say it, free indeed 834@gmail.com. So free indeed, one word, 834@gmail.com. I will send you a whole file of 60 practice tasks to just work for. That's just 5 minutes to just practice your solution focused skills, practice scaling, practice asking best hopes, practice working with groups, practice asking what else, practice asking what difference would it make. Again, just keep doing those sorts of things until they become intuitive, instinctive, and just do it. So in the last slide, second last slide, what difference does it make? So what would you do differently as a result of what I've just shared? Scribble down some things. If you want to put that in the comment section, that'd be encouraging. Or what's going to be better as a result of this little presentation? What else? So I'm going to end the slideshow after this, because I would welcome some questions. We've got 10 minutes or so. And if there's comments there, we can read those out as well. Please don't hesitate to turn on your microphone, and it'd be nice to see your faces as well. So if I go there and quit, it should automatically take me back to this. Cool. All right. It'd be nice if you could turn your cameras on, people, and I'd love to see you all there.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you take notes? Do you write things down on a whiteboard or on a flip chart or anything when your group sessions?
Good. Yeah, no, we do. So I do. Actually, it becomes, when I'm talking children and adults. So when we do our contract, that's what we generally do in it. So for our first session, we make the contract. I turn that over and put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 8, and we write down the best hopes from each week. So each week we are asking, what are your best hopes from our time together? And I write that, and that becomes a real encouragement at the end. So you can see some people might say that I wouldn't feel sad all the time, or that might be their best hopes in the session 1. Session 6 might be something like, that I'll make plans for the future. And it's really clearly that things are getting better for them, which is cool. Yeah. So yeah, we write those down and share that. Any other questions?
There's questions in the chat.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you. I haven't looked at that at all. Oh, the best hopes. Cool. Okay, so difference between individual and group work. I think the thing that our program is called a peer support program, and what's really encouraging about that is people make friends with each other and become a support to each other after the program's finished often. I'm very much a fan of group work, and I'd say in terms of looking at outcomes from my perspective, what I've noticed, that group work is more effective than individual work. I think, yeah, I mean, that'd be my opinion when I've seen that. Yeah, I'm a real fan of groups, and particularly if there's a common theme, I think. So if I had a group of people that they were just people getting together and wanted to do some solution focused work, that might be a little bit different from people who are all suffering from a grief or an alcohol or drug related issue. If those are separate groups. I'm going to turn my light on because it's getting dark here, so hang on. I feel like my background's getting weird. Okay, so yeah, so in terms of that would be that. Has anyone got another comment on or question on that? When there's one or two not really, it's probably the same as when you're working with individuals. If there's people not really, you keep asking. I mean, when I was talking about that girl who was through the tears, saying, I don't want to be sad all the time. And that came after a lot of I don't knows, and also 5 minutes of I don't knows. When you kept asking, I don't want to be sad, and then she came up with I don't want to be sad, what would you want to be instead? There was a lot of I don't knows, I don't know. And then her dad would be there, and what difference would it make if your dad was there? Well, I'd be happy. And what would you notice if you were happy? I think you don't give up, and you don't rescue the person if they can't answer, if they're not ready for solutions. The thing is, I probably have an assumption that they've come along to that group as well because they want a solution. They want something better. They want something to change. So that would be my assumption, actually. If they're sitting there in front of me, I'm going to keep going until they come up with something that they want from being there. I would say that, I even use those words. So this is not a waste of your time. What might be some small thing you want? And it's kind of would be along the vein of those mandated clients, the people who have been sent there and they have to have it. Even if it comes up with like, so I don't have to go to this group anymore. That's a good reason. What difference would it make if you weren't in this group? Well, I'd get to hang out with my friends. Well, what difference would it make if you got to hang out with your friends? Well, I get to do what I want to do and when I want to do it. And what difference would that make? And you keep asking that difference question until you come up with something like, well, I'd be happy or something, whatever it is. In my mind would be something like that. Then I can say, well, if that happiness showed up tomorrow, what's something you would notice about that? What might others notice? And what else? And I want a description of those sorts of things. I can write my email down, yes. And I can put that in there. So please do email any time. 864. And no, it's not 864. 8 Gmail. Any other questions that I've missed? I thought you could save the chat somewhere. Oh yeah, save chat. So I've saved that now for all those information. Your group's just about similar stage. So we're talking about, so in terms of stages of loss, question there. So right back at the start, you might have missed the beginning. Our philosophy doesn't believe, like it's in the stages of loss, it's about living with the loss. And so we're using the continuing bonds model of grief and loss, if you wanted to look that up. Yeah, so that's about living with the loss, not getting over the loss, I suppose. And which kind of fits, I think, with our solution focus process. So it's about change. It's about moving forward in those things. So I don't think that comes up, that people being at different stages. And that's probably where I have started thinking about that it could be any issue. It doesn't have to be lost. If there was someone in the group, because again, what I said is the solution doesn't always relate to the problem. So they could be coming when someone wants their husband back, someone would want a free life or a new job, or whatever it is. I'm still going to start asking questions about what difference would that make, and if that, so what do they want instead, and suppose that showed up tomorrow, those two words, instead and suppose, if that makes sense. Resources. Very, very good book that I read. I could have put that into the slideshow. I have got, I might, no, was, what's it, John Hendon's book on suicide. It's on Amazon. That was very, very good. An overview of solution focus things, and it's about asking the difficult questions and how he talks about zero suicide. That was a very, very good book. It's one I've read from cover to cover. I'm not a big reader, so when you say that, I probably learn, my learnings come through, I've been part of the SFU for about 15, 16 months now. And there's so many resources on there. The Solution Focused podcast is a really good resource and there's lots of reading and papers to read that they put in their resource section on that. That's sfontour.com. I've got those. If you missed the beginning of the slideshow, I might be able to find that again, and I can put that up, because I've just got those web pages. Or if you go back to the recording, you'll see the recording if you want to go back to this. And I've got 3 websites to look at, which is that have been really useful. But John Hendon's book is very good. Yeah, so the thing is, I've found a lot of those solution-focused books are all, they say the same thing in some ways. It's asking the same, and it's just reinforcing it. The way, I think, is the way a solution-focused practitioner gets better is by practicing, just finding those practice tasks. And yeah, so please, I wonder if I can put that file. There's a file sharing here function. I could put the solution-focused practice tasks there, possibly, if I find them quickly. And then you can grab them off this webinar or this time off the computer. So I do have that. Okay, so I will put this file, and it's just practice tasks. So I would say that's the best place to learn to get better. Where is it? No. Cool. Someone else loves the podcast. That's cool. Resources. I do. Where is it? Where's practice tasks? That's annoying me now. I thought I had it somewhere easy. I've got so many resources. If you email me, I would like to share it now, because then you can grab it straight away. But if I do a search, practice. Oh yeah, as a PowerPoint of practice tasks. So I'm going to do that. Oh, where is it? Open, done. Okay, so that's a PowerPoint if anyone wants to grab that. And it's about 55 or 56 practice tasks. And they just take 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes each, and you just find a partner and go for it. That would be my most recommended thing to help with to get better at solution focused approach. All right, it's 4 minutes ago. Unless someone's got some more questions, I was instructed to tell you to go back to the main room of the Australian conference if you've got the link for that, and they'll say a farewells and goodbyes there. So
sorry, I can't see where to get that file from. Can someone advise me?
Is it in the chat?
In the chat, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't look there. Thank you.
You can download that file.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. I look forward to hearing your stories, and feel free to email.
Thanks, Matt.
All good. Ka kite.
Thank you.
It's in the Māori language. See you later. Ka kite anō. See ya.